Thank you all, yes, for sharing your name and where you're from, a little bit of information about you. Um, as Emily mentioned, this is the SEEC Digital Power Hour, and today will be focused on the SEO basics, a lot of things that you as a organization, a small business owner can, take action on and help to optimize your website, your business online. So a little bit about me. My name's Chris Coughlin. I've been with Black Dog for, I think it'll be 10 years in about a couple months or a couple weeks, actually. I primarily do sales and project management as well as some strategy development. Worked directly with a lot of small businesses over the years, as well as EDOs, tourism organizations, workforce organizations, and municipalities. So this would be anything from the initial calls, developing a scope of work based on those conversations with the client, onboarding those clients, and then sort of acting as a liaison between the agency and the client throughout the duration of the project. When we were smaller, I think I was a third employee, so I really got my start in education, and then I feel like having to do a lot of the work early on, and then as we added team members, and we're a team of roughly almost a dozen now, that obviously roles have shifted a little bit. Where as opposed to doing a lot of the nuanced work, it's more of leading that sort of strategy, big picture process for clients. And then Black Dog Design. So we've been around since 2007. As Emily mentioned, we're a full service branding, marketing, web design agency. So anything from the initial brand development consisting of a visual identity, your messaging, your positioning, graphic design of certain digital and maybe print assets that are needed as a small business, for example. Web design and development, everything from sort of that wireframing, the content development, the graphic design, and then the actual development itself. Marketing strategy and content creation. So this could be the development of a upfront strategy that a client is going to implement. It could be development of that strategy, and then we're also implementing that on a monthly or quarterly basis. Things like social media, display, native and video advertising, email marketing, blog writing, all sorts of content creation there. And then obviously, as I mentioned, graphic design, digital and print advertising, which is obviously heavy on the graphic design as well. And then placement of those ads. So that's a little bit of a background about myself and the agency. I will move into sort of just the different buckets on the agenda today of things that we're going to go over. So quick definition of SEO, if anyone is sort of unfamiliar with that. A little quick information on the difference between paid search and organic search. If you're looking at Google, for example, why it's important, and then the core piece of today would be sort of 4 elements of an SEO strategy that you as a small business owner or an organization could take advantage of. And then obviously Q&A at the end. Also, if you have questions, throughout, feel free to interrupt me, tell me to stop talking, and we can go through those. So the first thing is, before I ask this question, is everyone here aware of what SEO is? Yes, this is a little soft. So SEO, we would consider the process of making your website more visible at the top of organic search results, which would not be paying for ads to show up as the top 3. I think over the years, a lot of, anyone that uses Google has probably become more accustomed to knowing when it's an ad at the top that says sponsored now. They didn't always say that. Typically, it's say the top 3 are ads. So SEO, we would consider not those top 3. Those top 3 are what we would call SEM, so search engine marketing, where you're paying for ads. And that's just a little bit of what this slide outlines. If you were trying to come up on those top 3, you would pay for ads, and those are immediate placements where you're bidding on certain keywords against competitors to show up in those top 3. So it's an immediate strategy and it costs money. And if this is large enough here, you can sort of see in bold, it says sponsored right above these results. So those always show up at the top. Usually above this, people ask the drop downs, as well as any sort of map listings, those sorts of things. But then if you scroll down where there's no sponsored, you can see the organic search results. Organic SEO is something that isn't going to happen overnight. That's another key difference. It's sort of a consistent effort to get people to come to your website over time. And another thing is if you're buying an ad, you're paying for it, you can get immediate clicks based on those bids. Organic, you're optimizing your website, but websites as a whole aren't going to rank. Individual pages will rank. So you have to think of it as a specific page, a specific URL that you're optimizing as well as your whole site to get that page to show up for a specific search. So it's sort of a long-term strategy where you need to optimize pages specific to their content on those pages to come up for something that somebody's searching. And then a little bit of why this is important. So over 99% of traffic and clicks when you're searching on, say, Google, for example, are all going to be on the results that are on the first page. So if you're not showing up on the first page, chances are you're not being found. And then even more so, almost 40% of clicks are all going to the top result, and another 28, 29% are going to the second and third results on average. So pretty much you need to be trying to land in those top three for a specific search, a specific request, whether it's a product, a service, or a question. Go down here. And then before I actually go there, so are there any questions in terms of what is SEO or why it's important before we get into the different elements of it?
No questions, but thanks for the down and dirty basics. I like it.
So yes, I'll move on to the 4 elements that we would consider the core of an SEO strategy for a small business to really optimize your site and your business online. So the first one is it all starts with keyword research. So finding out what people are searching to find your product, your service, or your website. The next would be the specific on-page SEO. So what can you do to optimize a specific page of your website? Obviously using your keyword research. And then third would be the off-page SEO. So getting other sites to link to you, reputation management. Obviously your Google business listing is going to be huge for both of those sort of things. That's one of the most common places people will look. And then also we put in a little bit of the technical SEO tactics that you can use. You may or may not have the ability to do all of this in-house, but these are also things to consider if you are working with someone or if you have those, that experience and the technical skills yourself to do some of those. So next, so keyword research. So really, you might say, hey, I sell, I think someone said there's a coffee shop, there's a farm here. You could say, hey, I sell this product. But what would my customers really search for to find me online? And that's the big thing here is, for example, and I think there's actually a slide down here that mentioned it. You wouldn't want to just say coffee near me, right? You may, but what if there is a lot of competitors? So do you need to be more specific with those sorts of things? Does it need to be, specific types of coffee? For example, if you sold coffee beans online that people could order, where I could search, hey, I'm into, a certain type of roast, that sort of thing. And the other thing to think about in terms of this step 3 is to focus on the terms and searches that have decent volume with manageable competition. And that's sort of what I'm getting at. A good example would be if you search for, say, shoes, you're going to get 1,000 results. You're going to get all sorts of ads. But another thing to think about would be like men's running shoes for people with high arches, right? You can get very specific, and this goes for any product, any industry or organization, and the competition is going to go down for those, yet the potential click-through rates is going to go up. So while it's a smaller sample size, you are making it more manageable to achieve that top 3 listing and get your page clicked on and someone to your site. And collectively, if you can optimize pages like that, more than one, right? A long-term strategy, as we talked about, that will add up. And that's why one of the things that we suggest to any business is if you don't want to pay to run ads, you should think about how can I write blog articles or news articles for long tail keywords. And before you get into that, step 4, we would say, is build out a content calendar. We would say just use a spreadsheet, list the keyword, right? So you might have what you think of it as, but you need to figure out what are people searching. So what is that specific keyword they're using to find my product or service? Then what would the page, article, or title be that ideally needs to use that keyword or fragments of it? And then the SEO title, as well as the meta description, writing those up and making sure that your keyword is in that. And when we reference things like the SEO title and meta description, here's just a quick screenshot of TripAdvisor here. So the SEO title would be this blue hyperlink that everyone clicks on when you use Google. And the meta description is that sort of 2-line gray text that always shows up. So obviously this would be, say, best restaurants near me, best restaurants in Schoharie County. And obviously they have best restaurants and the county name in the search. They have best restaurants in Schoharie in the meta description. And obviously TripAdvisor also pays a lot of money, so that's probably why they're showing up. But this is not a sponsored post. This is organic. So obviously they're putting a lot of effort into that organic strategy. But it's something that even a small business can do. And you can see that, hey, there's a keyword. It's pretty clearly that phrase is in the SEO title, as well as the meta description. And I see a chat. I do the same thing, Julie. And so this is what I'm talking about in terms of a content calendar that I would highly suggest any organization uses. You know, you don't have to recreate the wheel. It can be as simple as a spreadsheet like this. So starting with this key phrase, then obviously the page title and SEO title that should contain the key phrase or variation of it. And then also the meta description. And we also suggest that the URL, as long as it's not too messy, the URL tries to include that key phrase. It used to be, say, 5-10 years ago, where you would have to have the exact key phrase, like exact formatting, even down to like the hyphen they'd want it in every single one of these. But largely Google, who has really led the way, as well as some other search engines, has sort of changed how they're analyzing content using AI. It's a lot smarter now, so that you say Vermont housing programs, page titles, Vermont housing programs, the organization name has Vermont. So you have those, the fragments of that keyword in there, and Google will be able to pick that up. And then you can see where we bolded the keyword in the meta description. And then if you really looked at the URLs, they're in there as well. So that's where we would start for keyword research is I sell a product. What I would call it, are people actually searching that? What is the difference? Use what people are searching, what they're looking for online, and then lay out the page title, SEO title, meta description, as well as the URL, so that you can have consistency across all these things, because that will help that page or that piece of content rank more highly in search results.
Question.
Yes.
What are some good places to do keyword research?
Good question. So that was my next slide here. So there's a variety of keyword research tools. So I'll share this presentation at the end. All of these are linked. So Google Keyword Planner, you can plug in your keyword. It'll give you related phrases according to different products and services. It's pretty easy to use. Sometimes Google search suggestions, right? Start typing in, see the drop down. What are people searching? Answer the public. Same thing. Uber Suggest is one that I really like. It has it's a limit on the number of free searches per day until it becomes paid. Similarly, it'll tell you, hey, if you entered this keyword, here's the search traffic. Here is all these related keywords organized by search traffic. And if you were to do any sort of paid strategy, Uber Suggest gives you estimated cost per clicks as well. And then some of these paid solutions are much more robust. So SEMrush obviously has the keyword research tools, but you can do competitor research, local SEO, there's content strategy, Hrefs, same thing. You can audit your website, track where you're ranking across different search engines more than Google. And then Moz is another one that has just sort of a full suite of SEO tools. So there's a lot of free and paid solutions out there. If you're just new to this, I would definitely suggest, probably going right to the Google Keyword Planner. Any other questions on keyword research? All right. If not, I will move forward to on-page SEO. So obviously, this is very tightly correlated with the keyword research piece here. So you have that keyword, the page title and SEO title is going to be the meta description, the URL, you've laid all that out. Now, if you're, for example, writing a blog, that's a very easy thing to think about, or a new page or a new piece of content. How do we structure that? And that's what we really want to go through on the on-page SEO. So structured content, not just structured blog content, is key here. So if you use any sort of website builder, a lot of them will have built-in headers, right? So like H1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph. And you can see a little mock-up here on the side of an ideal way to lay this out. So H1, so the biggest headers, should typically be reserved for your title on the page. You don't want to use it again. Then you need to have an intro paragraph. And then if there's sections, you typically should be using an H2 or an H3 to really structure the content and chop it up into digestible segments. Another thing is any images should have alt text. I think the easiest way to describe that is a little tag on the image. And if you've ever been to a website where the image doesn't load and you get that little broken image icon that's really small, sometimes there's text under it. That's that alt tag that has been entered on the back end. A lot of platforms, WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, they have that built in. Whereas if you upload an image to your site, you can actually enter that in there. And it's sort of like a little descriptive caption for what the image represents. It's also great for screen readers, right? If you're trying to make your site ADA accessible. So it's something that has obviously benefits in multiple ways. And then obviously the meta description we talked a little bit about, you can enter that on the page, customize that, make it specific to the content as well as the URL here. And the reason for this is that search engines are looking for things in a certain format so that they can crawl, is what they call them, and index your site and judge it and say, this is what this page and this site is about. And this ranks well. This is a good experience for users, and therefore you're going to move up search rankings. Another thing to think about is when you're on this page, you want your keyword, or at least a very close variation, to be in that title. You want it to be in the first paragraph as well. And there's a little bit more on the next couple pages about some other tips here, so I won't go through on this page with that. But does that seem to make sense in terms of the structured content? I'm sure a lot of people, Julie, to your point, when you travel, if you're looking up things to do, it's very common to see, hey, they're numbered, right? They're like 10. The numbers are in the headers. There's a description below it. It's very segmented and easy to review and read.
This is great, Chris. Thank you.
Awesome. Of course. And then lastly, so some other tricks and tips for on-page SEO that are sort of related to the prior slide is linking, readability, and the length of your content are very important. So you want to use short sentences where possible, subheadings, transition words. You also should be linking to other pages on your site. You should also at times link to other outside resources, always opening in a new tab so someone's not fully leaving your site to go there. That's another thing that we see commonly done. Sometimes you click it and it just removes you and takes you away from the website. We would say, hey, no, open that in a new tab so that your site stays open. And then 300 plus words would be a recommendation for any post or page. I would say that's probably more of a website page suggestion. For posts, if you can get that up to like 500 to 1,000, if it's a full-blown article, that would be ideal as well. And another tip here is to aim for, a page that an 11-year-old could read. This goes to this link here, which I can share, goes to the the Flesh Reading E-score. It's something that Yoast, which is an SEO platform and plugin for WordPress and Shopify, talks about, where you should be able to simplify your content so that someone who's 11 years old can read it and understand it. And then, before we go on too far as well, I will flip back to this little chart here. It's important, as I mentioned, to have the keyword in the header as well as your intro paragraph, but then also sprinkled throughout. There's a thing called keyword density, which Google actually uses to kind of balance, like, hey, are you shoving that keyword in everywhere and it's not really the best user experience, versus is it organically throughout and you can get an idea for what this page represents. So the keyword density suggestion is usually anywhere like roughly like 3%. So if you had 1,000 words, that would mean you wouldn't want your keyword to be mentioned more than 30 times, which seems a lot. But also that will consider keyword synonyms as well. So slightly different phrasing of it. If it's a 300-word article, then that would be what, roughly 10 mentions of it. So that's also something to take into account so that it doesn't feel like you're just jamming it in there. It's not authentic and doesn't make sense, but also while representing it. And then making sure that it's not just mentioned at the top, that you're sprinkling it in all throughout. Are there any other questions on on-page SEO, writing content? I don't know if anyone has thoughts or, hey, based on their experience, things that they have done or maybe challenges they've, come to when creating content.
This is Julie. I'll just say, it's great that it can be on an 11-year-old level, but it's also such a travesty, isn't it? But we appreciate it and thank you for the resource. And my
Yeah.
run-on sentences will no longer work in this world. Sorry.
Yeah. And it's a constant moving target, right? You probably, if you're following anything SEO related or Google, they change what their algorithm is, yet they don't fully release it all the time. So you create new content, but you also should be going back and reviewing old content and making sure that it's performing well. Like, for example, we have a WordPress site. A lot of our clients, we would build their sites in WordPress. So we use a plugin called Yoast SEO. There's a free version and it works great. There's also a paid version. The free version, you could create all your content and it will give you, it's like a stoplight, it's colored. So green obviously is good. And it will tell you, hey, your keyword density is great. Your keywords in the meta description and SEO title. You have it in H2 and H3, which is great. It's not sprinkled throughout the entire page. It's only at the top. So there's this sort of checklist that you can use to actually first write your content and then judge it and then tweak it to optimize it for SEO. Yoast also works for Shopify. It doesn't work for Wix. Wix has its own sort of built-in SEO capabilities, but we like Yoast a lot. For anyone that has a WordPress site, I would highly suggest it because there is a free version of that plugin, and it's it's pretty intuitive and visual to say, I just need to get as much to green as possible to optimize this page.
So, Chris, I think it's a good place to pause since we have such a small group. Maybe go around the room just to ask which platform people have their website currently built on. So, Leslie, do you know your platform for your website?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute. I'm on Squarespace.
Okay. And then Emily, you want to call out to the ladies in the room?
Well, yeah, I'll go first, don't worry.
I'm right now, I just have my Facebook up and I'm currently, I just actually talked to someone who was working with me on a brand. And so now that I have that, I'm planning on starting to build my website. Through the program that I went through, they offer like a promotion through Keepful. To kind of help with building the website, and I'm actually up in the air about which is better. To kind of have somebody partner with you in that or do your own. And if it's worth the investment, that monthly maintenance fee.
I have everything on Kajabi.
What was that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I have everything on Kajabi.
Okay. And
SEEC uses Squarespace as well.
awesome.
Thank you. So it sounds like 5 different platforms for 5 different people.
Yes.
So, sorry, Chris.
No worries. But yeah, I think some of the like these tips here in terms of on-page SEO, like start with the keyword, page title, SEO title, meta description, URL, and then structuring of content, making sure that keyword is sprinkled throughout are really the core pieces for on-page SEO. So if you don't have, for example, like we suggest Yoast, if you don't have that, I know Wix, for example, you can definitely type in the SEO title, meta description. I believe the same exact thing with Squarespace. So a lot of these platforms have some of the SEO basics built in. So then it comes down to, hey, let's just make sure we're structuring and writing our content properly. Then I will, if there's no other questions or comments, I will move on to some off-page SEO tactics.
So Chris,
Yes.
how much of this is done on a site like Squarespace, who does a certain amount of SEO prepping for you? And how do I know what level is done and what level isn't?
So you should be able to go to a page on your website, a section on called the backend dashboard.
Yeah.
Let's start, say, with a page and actually view if an SEO title or meta description has been entered for you. And then
Okay.
that's if you see that in a section on that page, you should be able to then say, okay, like, does this keyword or this search, right, make sense to be the title of this page?
Right, and then I've found that I'm able to edit that.
Yes, you
Yeah.
should be able to, as long as they
Yep.
provided or built
Yep.
it, or if you built it, give you full access.
Okay, thanks.
And then from there, it's sort of analyzing the actual copy on the page as it pertains to that keyword, SEO
Yep.
title, and meta. Any others? All right, I will move to the next section here. So off-page SEO. So obviously on page, kind of self-explanatory, talk about optimizing on a specific page. Off page, we're going to start with your Google business listing. How many people here have a Google business listing that they have claimed and they either manage or have all their information on? Hopefully everyone.
I've been struggling getting approved because I don't have, I work out of my home, but I don't have clients come to my home. And I actually just failed another video verification. If you have any pointers, I would greatly appreciate it. I did change myself to service only and took my address off, so I'm like listed more as a, but yeah, I've been trying for a few months and I can't seem to get the sweet spot with even with researching like what needs to be in the video, I can't seem to get it to approve me.
Okay, so yes, we have heard this before. Are they giving you the postcard option?
They haven't yet.
Okay, so
It just said my only option was to continue to make these videos.
Okay. I would, I mean, continue to do what they're saying. It's a little difficult. We have seen people have difficulty with getting it up when they don't have an office that they want someone to come to. Um, they, as of recently, we're still offering the postcard verification as a method, but I don't believe it's the primary, where you tell them where to mail a postcard to, you get it, there's a code on it, and you plug it in, and then that verifies you, and you can change all your information from there.
Mhm. Okay, I can look into that, definitely, thank you.
And I saw one other hand up in the conference room. Correct? Do you have a business listing as well?
It's such a long time ago, it's probably not very accurate. I should probably take a look at it.
And then Leslie, Peter, Trish, do all of you have business listings as well?
No, I don't.
I do not either,
Me neither.
other than, what we have at SEEC.
Gotcha. So yeah, so this will be good then. So the Google business listing is a very important piece, obviously, because it's going to show all your information. It looks pretty official, and the majority of people are going to Google. It's also the most important citation for local SEO, because any other obscure citation type pages oftentimes will look to Google, whether it's Bing, Microsoft, Yellow Pages. I mean, I don't know how many people visit and use the Yellow Pages online now, but it is deemed the most important citation for local SEO because that's where people are going, and a lot of other smaller sites will use that. So a citation is what we consider your name, address, phone number. And it's very important that anywhere online, those are consistent. So chances are, if someone has a listing, so your phone number's changed, that any other sort of search engine may have differing information than Google, meaning that someone may not call you, the website could have changed, those sorts of things. So having consistent, what they call NAPs, across all different citations, primarily on Google, will help you appear on Google Maps, right? If I'm searching like near me and I get the map and all the listings on the left there, obviously those are, when we're talking about that, we're talking really about the top 3 on those map listings, as well as if somebody uses any voice search or mobile queries, which are again becoming more common. So making sure you are listed on Google as a Google business listing, that it's verified and you own it. You may, if you don't have one, you might search your business name and there could be one there, and you can actually click claim this business listing. It's a small link on the right side by that business listing to do that. So we would highly suggest that. If it does not appear, we would suggest, hey, just set up a basic Gmail, and then you could literally just go to Google and search Google business listing, go to that URL and start the process of setting that up. And just a few steps that are, I know we've talked about one challenge with setting up that ideally should be easy. I don't know if it's the service provider and address thing that is the only sticking point there, but if you go there, you can start to just enter all your basic information, go through the verification process, and get all the items set up, which would be name, address, phone number, making sure they're consistent. You can select business categories, which helps with searchability. You can add your hours. You can add, a lot of times it actually requires you to add photos. So exterior, interior, you could add staff, products. You can add a lot of different things there just to provide more information on your site. And again, consistency is key. If you went to other platforms, you may find, hey, the website's off, the email's off, the phone number is off. So that's where you want to make sure that everything is accurate, starting with Google. And then the other piece that we deem very important.
I think you have a question, Chris, if you want to pause for a sec,
Oh.
sorry.
Yes.
Is that more important for location businesses as far as opposed to like a online business?
I would say for a business that has a location, I would say it's important for all. It's definitely something that all businesses need to be doing. The fact that you can come up though on say like map listings and for like near me searches, I think adds another layer to some businesses that people can visit as to why it's important to have. Any other questions? All right, I'll go to the next slide here. And once you have your business listing all set up, another big thing is managing reviews and engaging with those reviews. So what we call reputation management. Obviously, Google's one of the easiest places to do it. Facebook as well. Really, any of the basic channels you're already using are where we would suggest starting. If you were a tourism type business as well, TripAdvisor, things like that nature would come into play as well. So once you own that business listing, responding to the good and the bad reviews is something that is taken into account, as well as your overall, how many stars, 4.8, 4.9, those sorts of things. So even if somebody leaves you a poor review, it's very important to approach it from a professional level and respond to them and show that you're addressing it. Just something that, isn't always the most fun to do, but is highly suggested and recommended to manage those reviews and respond to them. Other than that, like I said, if it's not Google, if you're a tourism business, it could be TripAdvisor, it could be on Facebook, it could be really on any channel where somebody has the opportunity to leave you a review. It could be as simple as, obviously, even if it's in the comments of a post on Instagram or LinkedIn, that similarly, there should be a response. It's thought out. It's professional. And then the next section will be technical SEO. This is obviously that fourth section of the called 4 elements. Before I get into this, did anyone want to bring up anything on the off-page SEO section or maybe even keyword research or on-page?
No, just the comment that, wow, there's a lot to it. It's become such a science in having a website to really, for it to be meaningful and to stand out in the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. If you, just want to kind of go back a little bit when you mentioned the organic SEO, how long does it take to really establish that, as opposed to paying big dollars to buy, your spot?
I would phrase it as few weeks to a few months to notice it.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is if you develop or optimize a page, write a blog, whatever that is, it's like how much time will you need before you notice an impact in traffic, right? It's not going to be 1,000 new people per day. Chances are it's going to be like 10, 10, 12, 12, like, stepping up like that to that specific page. Then you look back 3 months from now and say, oh, whoa, that's a 1,000 website visitor increase on that page. So I would say few weeks to few months to start to notice it. If you go into Google Analytics or any other analytic platform, we typically like to look in probably like 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month views. Because that's where you start to really see meaningful change as a whole site, but you can view it in a little smaller segments, like I said, weeks to a few months if you're talking about an individual page and is that starting to grow.
Gotcha. So patience is key.
Yes, and that's why that sort of consistency of optimizing and creating new comes into play. Because you can optimize your home page, but it's probably, in terms of the type of content, it's going to be the most straightforward, simple, probably those core keywords that are highly competitive. So it's harder to just rely on that one page to get you in the top 3 in all your traffic. Whereas if you can elevate a lot of the others as well, collectively, you'll start to see a change in the whole website's traffic. And we've actually seen, welcome. We've actually seen too for many clients that will create blogs, whether it's 1 or 2 blogs a month. You look back, and this is why like the 12-month view is great. And you could say, hey, 6 of the top 12 pages visited end up being blog pages. And those long tail searches, right, for something very specific, got somebody to your site. And then in Google Analytics as well, you can see how many pages on average are people viewing when they go to the site. So you can say, okay, I get 10,000 people here because of a blog, and they on average are looking at 3.2 pages, meaning they're exploring further after that. And while your homepage is probably number 1, chances are, those other 6, there's a chance they add up to more than that homepage.
Got it.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a blog too. It could be a specific product or service or offering page where you can nail down to that more specific keyword. Awesome. I will move to this next section then, unless there's other final questions. So technical SEO. So we're talking about improving the performance, speed, accessibility of your website. This is something that some of you may or may not be able to do directly in the back end of your site. It really will depend on the platform. For example, when I mentioned we use WordPress a lot, we can do it, but WordPress, we kind of need a developer to do it. Whereas some platforms like Squarespace and Wix will allow you to do some of these things in a more simple manner on the back end. So when we're talking about technical SEO, we're talking about optimizing the structure and really the infrastructure on the back end to help search engines crawl and index it more accurately, effectively. And when we say crawl and index, any search engine is constantly scanning the internet for new content and new pages. It's actually very complex and wild, I guess, to think about. So if you're optimizing your pages, your content, that's step 1. And then there's sort of this technical side of it, step 2, to make it easier and to sort of influence what you want a search engine to look at and how you want them to analyze it. So key focus areas here would be site speed and performance, the mobile user experience, crawlability in indexing it, secure connections. So we're talking security, SSL certificate. If you look in a search bar on any browser, you can see like the little green lock where you can click in and it'll say this site is secure. So that's what the HTTPS means. And then also accessibility is huge. So whether you're using an ADA accessibility or compliance plugin or solution or not, making sure that things are clear, easy to read, things of those nature. So to start with speed and performance, so site speed has increasingly become a large factor in how Google is viewing sites, specifically on mobile devices as well. So we wanted to just provide a few different tips and things you could use here. So if you're updating a new image onto your website, if you took it with a camera, or even if you took it with an iPhone and it's the largest size when you're like sending it and you can choose those options, the largest size images, one image isn't going to slow your site down and hurt you that much. But over time, if you're adding lots of large image files, even if that image isn't on the front end, your website is hosting that on the back end, unless you go and delete them out. So this is a URL, tiny PNG. You can use it just to compress image files for the web. Obviously, as an agency, we use things like Adobe, but this is a very simple tool that anyone that doesn't have access to that can use. So minimizing CSS and JavaScript. So these are types of code oftentimes used on a lot of websites. There are certain plugins and solutions for different platforms that will reduce the amount of code, those lines, to simplify these things. A plugin such as Auto Optimize is meant to sort of simplify that for someone that isn't a developer. Use caching plugins or solutions. So if Google is constantly crawling your site looking for changes and updates, And as well, if you're constantly updating your site, I don't know if you've ever updated your site, anyone here? On the
Yeah.
back, and then you go to the front end and the change doesn't show. Has anyone experienced that?
We have to refresh, right?
Yes, but that doesn't always work at times. And that
Then
would,
what?
so that would be because when you constantly go to a site, and it could be you or it could be a user, your browser is remembering that.
Yeah.
And using that to load it faster next time. So commonly, like as an owner, you're probably on the site often, so you might see this more than others. You can actually clear the cache, and you can do that in the website. And you also can do that like if you went to Google Chrome, for example, or any browser where you have like history, logins, clearing your cache is another thing there, another option where we'll remove all that data. But this would be using a solution that is specific to your site. Say you made a bunch of updates, you clear it at that moment. No browser is pulling in any old information. Google's going to index that at that moment. You're sort of like trying to force Google to know to index this. Another thing would be a content delivery network. This is something that uses site speed, or helps your site speed. A lot of hosting providers will offer a solution for this. So whether you're hosting it through your direct platform or using something like GoDaddy, you can actually get a CDN. Cloudflare is a kind of separate second, their own third-party solution. What this does is it actually sort of chops up the content, so it's only loading pages as needed, as opposed to when I go to a website, technically in the back end, it's loading more than just that page. And then again, if you have certain code, plugins, other functionality on your site that isn't being used, those things tend to be the largest types of files, and those should be deleted if they're not used. So I know a lot of this stuff is technical. I will share this whole presentation after. If you want, you can click through and learn about these. If you're working with someone as well, you could bring those up to them. They may have more information as to whether you already are using these, or if they could add those or try those out for you. And the first thing I would do, or the last thing I would say here, is these tools to measure your page speed. So Google Page Speed Insights and GT Metrics. You can go right to those links right in here, plug your website in, and it'll give you a grade A through F of how well your site speed and performance is. So that's sort of the starting point. I would go there. It'll give you, specifically, we use GT Metrics a lot because it'll tell you certain reasons, like, hey, image files, unnecessary code. So it'll actually give you suggestions of what should be done. And then from there, if it's images, you might say, hey, I can go in there and check the size of the images, down save them, remove old ones. If it's the code, then maybe you're saying, hey, I need to get assistance on this. But that's a good place to start, would be these sort of tools to judge your website. The next piece then would be mobile friendliness and responsiveness. So obviously, I think most people are aware that the number of mobile users relative to desktop users has been increasing for years now. And obviously that's a different viewing experience. So most modern website platforms will provide a responsive theme, meaning if you were to open it on your browser and just drag the browser closed, the content will adapt to the width of the screen there. If your website currently is not using a responsive website theme, we would highly suggest redesigning and getting a responsive theme built out, or as used as a part of your website. And then also something that you could just do is reviewing your site on a phone to make sure, hey, is the text large enough? Is it readable? Just how does it look? From an agency standpoint, we usually like to design core pages in a mobile view to see how it looks. In Google Chrome also, we would hit right-click inspect, and you can actually look at the page like on my desktop, but how it would look on iPhone 10, iPhone 11, all that sort of stuff. But if you don't have that ability or that expertise, it's as simple as pulling it up on your phone, finding sort of these places that, hey, maybe we can improve how this looks for a user. And then allowing Google and other search engines to crawl and index your site. So making it easy for them to go through your site and understand how you want it to be perceived and viewed. So the easiest thing you can do is submit a sitemap to Google Search Console here. If you click this link, it just walks you through the steps, plug in your URL, gives you things to review. You can go through and do that on your own. Another thing would be, just looking at your site structure in terms of homepage, maybe tier 1 in your like products or services, contact, about, like those sorts of things. Making sure there's internal links across all those pages to get to other pages. So that's a big thing, something that you can, again, just look at the sort of front end of your site and make sure that there are those connections between pages, that it logistically makes sense. Broken links. So again, this is more of the site management piece. You may have updated your site, put certain links out or to other pages long ago. Going back and just making sure that those links still work is very important. Also, duplicate content. So this is one of the biggest negative impacts that for SEO, I should say, is if you have a page that uses a keyword and that's the entire topic, and then you have another page that's very similar, if not the same, that's going to be viewed as a negative. So another thing is if you're using a specific keyword on a main product, service page, whatever that is, you wouldn't want to use that same keyword on an article. You want to have it only used once. Yes, Leslie?
I didn't realize that.
Yes. And that goes back to the phrase that pages rank, sites don't. But if you focus on having pages rank consistently as a whole, your site's going to perform and rank better. But when you search something on Google, it's pulling up specific pages from other websites. You don't get the home page of every single site if you look on Google for a search. It's pulling up pages that are specific to that question or that search that you had.
Question.
Yes.
So a lot of times I'll write a blog post and then I do a podcast episode on it's the same topic. I just go deeper on the podcast. So using the same title for the podcast page and the blog page would be bad.
Yes, I would try to think of a way to maybe differentiate it slightly in terms of maybe the primary keyword that you're using. I think commonly what we see is if you have an article or if you have success stories or an article and a product page, is maybe one of those is more of a specific long tail keyword and one's a little more general, so they sort of balance off each other, and then linking those two together in the content.
So I should go and clean all that up on my website?
Yes, you ideally don't want them having the same exact content, same exact keyword, SEO title, meta description. You want them to work together, but be differentiated a little bit.
That's not two. I mean.
That's a lot of work. I didn't do that. I've been doing that for 3 years. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. Okay, that's good to know.
Any other questions? All right, I'll move on to these two here. So a robots.txt or text file. So this is a specific type of file that you can add or edit in a lot of, like, again, this is another thing that's in the back end of website platforms. It's different in every single one, but certain pages might be marked as, pages that you are having blocked or you do or don't want blocked. And it relates to this bullet here. No index would mean you don't want a search engine to search this. So first of all, I would make sure that you're reviewing to see, is this no index setting something that you can or can't edit in your platform? In WordPress, it's on every single page in the back end. I could have a page be public and I only want people who are provided that link to view it. Maybe it's like a registration for something. Or maybe you're sending it to your email list only or putting it through social. You could actually hit no index and then somebody can't search that and find it via Google or a search engine. This file, the robots.txt file, would help you to define which pages you do and don't want search engines to find. Again, this is a kind of a technical piece here. Depending on the platform, like I was saying, you may be able to edit and provide that in the back end of your site, or you may need assistance depending on what you're using. And then again, I talked a little bit about Yoast here. It's for WordPress, for Shopify. I know Wix has its own built-in SEO capabilities. I believe Squarespace does too. But also a lot of these platforms have plugins and extensions, things of that nature, that you can use for SEO to help you get some of this more functionality and be able to use it in a way that you don't need to know code or anything like that. And the last piece here of technical SEO, so accessibility, obviously, especially I know everyone's probably more familiar with ADA compliance and making sure that your site is, usable by people that might be visually impaired, things of that nature. So good accessibility is also going to help SEO practices every single time. So we talked a little bit about the content structure. So hierarchy, H1s, 2s, 3s, segmenting it, adding alt text to images, that will help as well. So the captions, making sure that keyboard navigation would work, making sure that links and calls to action are very clear as to what they're talking about. Obviously, you don't want a button to have 10 words and be a full sentence, but maybe it is like click the link below to learn more about our services. It's like learn more, as well as making sure that there's a contrast between text and backgrounds. And there are some tools, ADA tools specifically, that can help do a lot of this. So UserWay has free and paid options. I don't know if you've ever been on a website and there's like a little person icon in the corner, you click it, you can adjust the contrast between text in the background. You could actually click a button and it'll start reading the text out loud to you. It can make just the fonts bigger. These are things that from a design standpoint don't look good, but they're necessary from an ADA standpoint. And they'll actually help to protect you in case somebody ever was saying, hey, I can't use your website, I would have purchased. Municipalities, government organizations are much more of a target, I think, for these types of concerns. But it really is beneficial for all businesses to use an ADA type plugin or solution to help people navigate their site. Accessibility is another one that is a paid solution only. That's something we would suggest for a municipality or government entity because it's a lot more robust and helps them. But UserWay, I would suggest as a free option for any small business. Questions on the technical SEO section? So that really concludes the 4 areas for today's call. So just recapping a little bit, obviously keyword research, what are people searching? Making sure that search, that specific phrase is used in our SEO title, page title, meta description, URL on page. So we talked about structured content, obviously keyword density, use it in the header, use it in that first paragraph, sprinkle of the keyword throughout. Off page, we talked a little bit about the Google business listing, which I think is the first place I would start as a small business owner. Then technical SEO, obviously some things that you may have the ability to do in your current platform yourself, or may need a little bit of assistance, but it's a good sort of guide to go through and check to see if you can edit those things, or if you should consult with someone to update those on your site. And then lastly, SEO is a consistent effort. It's not a set it and forget it thing like buying an ad and just letting the budget run. And then obviously there's a lot of online solutions to streamline the work, plugins, extensions. It's really become a robust network where every website provider either has something built in or they have extensions, some which are free and paid, to use to help implement these things. But that, like I said, concludes sort of the presentation part here. I know we're at 11. We've asked some questions a little bit throughout. I wanted to ask if there are any final questions, thoughts, comments on anything we've covered today?
Chris, how much more effective are paid searches versus organic searches? And what's the typical ad cost for that?
So paid searches are effective, 100%. You could see cost per clicks anywhere from $1 to say $8, depending on your industry and the specific keywords. Typically, what we would suggest is you have sort of these ad sets. They relate, say you have 3 service or product lines, right? You have a campaign, there's 3 ad sets. They all align with each of those services, those products you have. There's a list of 10 to 20 keywords under each, and you're bidding. So if you went to, that's why I brought up like Uber Suggest. If you typed in your keywords, you could actually get a list of that keyword and like 10 similarities and how much it would cost per click on average to bid through Google. So budget wise to run that, you could spend as little as $5 a day or $5,000 a day. It all comes down to budget there. And then based on what the average click through or cost per clicks are, you would then be able to sort of see, again, if you're going to spend $5 a day, you're probably going to get 2-3 clicks tops. So it I guess it varies a lot in terms of what type of budget you have. Again, if you were to want to run 3 campaigns, but you only have $10 a day, we'd probably say, hey, that's not going to be enough. You need to just put this and consolidate this into one campaign. I don't know if that answers the question well enough.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is great, Chris. You know, I just want to make a comment. Thank you for doing this today. Learned a lot.
Awesome. Of course. Of course.
Yeah, really good. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Are there any other, I guess, comments or questions before we?
Well, what is Black Dog available for in terms of help here?
Yeah, so I'd say yes, we are available. Typically our process is, we hop on a call, sort of discuss your needs. We could put together obviously an audit or a scope of these needs and our suggestions. We usually send it over to clients. You can approve it, or we have a conversation about, hey, let's start here, and then we implement the work from there. So yeah, it's really specific, I guess, to, your needs on your site, what you're looking to have it done, whether you're looking to just do one area, whether you're like, hey, we'd like to do it all. We can have that conversation definitely if you'd like.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all this information. Makes me realize it's way over my head.
Thanks for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Great.
Welcome. Yeah, if that's it, then I guess we can wrap this up. And again, thank you all for coming. Emily, I believe you have this most recent version, correct?
Yes, I should.
Mailed over when I was out last week. So I don't know if you want to share it with everyone that was on this call. I think, yeah, recapping it would be my suggestion to you all, clicking on some of those links and, seeing what these solutions are and if any of them work with your website right now, as well as obviously, going through on the back end or front end of your site and just sort of giving it your own internal review and starting from there.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. I will have the recording and the presentation that I will share with everyone. And then just really quick, since it is Economic Development Week, so I'm going to go through the rest of the stuff we got going on this week. So actually 12:30 today, we're doing our broadband chat where we're going to be talking with Schoharie County Economic Development and Midtel about their $30 million broadband build. And then tomorrow we got State of the County Agriculture update at 12 p.m. from the County Ag office. And then Friday, we actually have a Sharon Springs Project Fund walkabout where Trish and I, we're going to go for a walkabout through the village of Sharon Springs. And then our next Power Hour series is actually on August 11th. And the topic for that one is going to be Canva 101. And you can find additional information about all of this at our website at seekny.org. which is SEECNY.org. And thank you all for coming today.